Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
This is a podcast all about generative AI, and it really comes out of my experience as a content provider and a writer. I go back 30 years. I've written all my life. And let me tell you something. The first time I saw OpenAI, I giggled when I saw how it could help anybody become a better communicator, to really spur that which communication wants to achieve, and that is a greater understanding among human beings. Anytime we can understand one another better, it is for human good. That's my belief. But I want to go broader than that. I'm an expert in content and writing and how generative AI will impact that. But our guests are really going to be from the world of generative AI and artificial intelligence. And that's why I'm really excited to have our guest today. He's been involved with conversational AI for many years, and he does some of the most unique events in the country, including one that's coming up here in September, which I'm very excited about attending. It's called Voice in AI. We'll all be convening at the Hilton in Washington, D.C. for what will be the East Coast's biggest meetup with regard to AI and the development of new applications for it. Pete Erickson is the CEO of Modev. That's the company behind these events. Pete, it is so nice to have you here this morning on a hot summer day.
Yeah, Greg, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, and I spent my morning at the pool for my kids swimming this summer. And yeah, I can attest it is warm out there.
It's exciting because I heard when you launched this and we reached out to you and we became the agency of record for this because of your past success, but also what this promises. You know, the unique thing about AI is there's no textbooks. There's no real coursework. You really have to learn it from other people.
Yeah.
And I have yet to been to an event that promises as much as learning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Voice in AI and what it's going to accomplish?
Yeah, and thanks so much, Greg. Really appreciate your introduction. And it's so nice to be partnered with Gregory FCA, such a distinguished firm. And, I think you called it correctly that, there is no playbook right now. And that happens when new technologies hit a tipping point in the market. And clearly what's happened is large language models have entered into the mainstream. There are now, dozens of large language models on the market. Of course, the one that started all of this was OpenAI's, large language model, and ChatGPT, their consumer-facing brand product that, gained 100 million users in a record period of time. So what's happened is large language models have entered the market, and that's really, in many ways upended the conversational AI market that we've been a part of for years. And I'll actually go all the way back to 2011. So Modev, we started really as a meetup community for mobile developers, and then we started building conferences for mobile developers, and then started working with a lot of the major platform providers on building out their developer-related communities. And it was the work that we were doing with Amazon to help them start to conceptualize and build their very first Amazon Alexa developer communities back in 2015 and 2016 that really clued us in that there needed to be an event focused on this new thing in the market called conversation design. And we had been tracking it since 2011, since Siri was released. We, developers were incredulous they couldn't get access to the APIs for Siri because they recognized that if they could incorporate voice into their applications, they could actually improve the experience of their applications in a number of different ways. So this is something that we were tracking. And then when we went on the road and we went to 15 markets in 2017 and met thousands of developers to talk about this new world of voice experiences. And that really started us on our journey. So we launched the Voice Summit Conference in 2018 and 2019. And then, of course, we know what happened in 2020, right, with the pandemic. But Greg, what happened during the pandemic is the hype cycle for those voice skills and voice actions on Google Assistant really passed through. And the reason it did is because developers and brands were having a hard time figuring out how to monetize voice. But at the same time, contact centers and call centers were figuring out that if they can incorporate AI voices into their contact center operations and their customer engagement, they could start to get big ROIs. So voice started to become an enterprise application. A lot of companies grew up around that, servicing major organizations like USAA and Capital One and others. And then enter large language models. So the title of your podcast, the disruption is now. LLMs are a highly disruptive technology into this market that, we've been tracking for a long time. And this year's event is the first time that really we bring together the new sort of LLM generative AI landscape with this enterprise conversational AI market. And it's all coming together at the same time. And we are awash in information right now. I think you're right. I think on, our LinkedIn feeds, there's so much happening so fast, so much funding. Big deals are being made. But what then needs to happen is the market needs to adopt these technologies and start to implement them so that there's real ROIs. And that's where we are in this moment in time.
So, Pete, where do you think this falls? I mean, you have perspective in the technology landscape that a lot of us don't have. As far as the impact this will have, things have come and gone. I mean, last year, 2 years ago is all about crypto. But there's been evolutions, revolutions. Where do you think this falls in the legacy of what the story will be written about technology?
Yeah, Greg, I think that this is a big shift. This is a shift technology. So it is a little bit like the dawn of the internet. So go back to the mid 90s where, most people didn't have internet and suddenly people were starting to get access to internet. We all saw companies like AOL grow up right around that period. But the internet was a shift in how we do business. And then, I'd say that, the next shift after that was as the internet, grew up and we saw the .com bubble go and then burst. But then, started the cloud journey, started shortly after that with AWS sort of taking the lead. So cloud was another sort of shift in the way that companies can build and scale technologies. Then you had mobile applications and smartphones, and that's completely changed how businesses engage. And still to this day, mobile applications are a primary channel, but it also just changes the way we do business. And we saw companies, grow up over that. So, Uber and Lyft are, two great examples, but there are countless other companies that blew up and grew up around mobile applications. Is still a huge market. So this now represents another major shift in how we do business. And it's a foundational shift for how things are going to get built and how customer engagements are going to happen.
And we really are at the tip of the iceberg. Like my expertise is in content, not in devs or applying this in any way that would be big, that would help with big data or anything like that. But it is content. And what really interests me is when the internet came, it took a couple years for it to really be adopted. And one of the problems was, I remember, being online late at night trying to download something and hearing that whistle in the back that would take forever to download.
Right.
We just didn't have the bandwidth or the processing.
Right.
And what's really fascinating to me with generative, it was first introduced in a consumer model.
Yes.
And it was so easy to use. Anyone, 3 months ago, everybody writing poems about an earnings release or whatever.
Yeah.
That really captured the imagination. Now, what I'm finding is I thought that would be revolutionary just in content, just in human language, just in helping us become better communicators. And I'm a big believer that communication is really meant to spur understanding, and anything that can improve human understanding has got to be good at its base. It can be misused, but certainly it's good. And it was brilliant that OpenAI felt the pressure to get it out there to a consumer market so that it made an immediate impact. And now, OpenAI next week announced they're going to release a code interpreter. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it turns anybody into an analyst of data. It's just amazing. I've been following it with some of the beta testers. I have not had the privilege of using it, but where this is going is what I really want to hear from you.
Yeah.
We start with almost I'm bastardizing conversational, and I mean content, right?
Right.
Now we're going into realms that we can't even foresee. So where do you see it going?
Yeah, well, I see. So just kind of also to reiterate where we are on the technology side. So now you've got 5G, which is mobile, high speed, connectivity. You've got large language models that are now accessible via APIs to anybody. You've got the ability to create synthetic voices, synthetic humans. All of this is converging into a revolution in how brands can engage with their customers. So there are now just so many new ways for brands to engage, for brands to get ROI on traditional things like contact and call centers. So I would say that, a lot of brands, there's two things that are going to happen. One, they're going to go for the sizzle of a new way to engage. And we're already seeing some really interesting ads come out that are leveraging, ChatGPT. I'd say a fun one was Ryan Reynolds with Mint Mobile. He did one where they wrote an ad with ChatGPT, and then he I think he read the ad, but it was very, very well done. And it was kind of like captured a little bit of the imagination. And that was kind of a fun way to show the capabilities of technology. But what's going to happen is brands are going to really work hard to figure this out. And they're going to do a couple things. It's like going all in on AI doesn't mean going all out on humans and humanity. So things like how voiceover actors play a role in this new space, how musicians and others, and we've seen also what's happening on the music front. So we are going to see this kind of revolution of engagement and interesting models pop up around that. But I think the big payoff for the market is in efficiencies. How can AI drive efficiencies for organizations? And this is where, things like job losses are going to be talked about. But there's also job creation. So where these efficiencies are gained and there can be some, maybe reduction in human capital, there's other areas where human capital is really needed. I think you mentioned just a second ago about, analysts and research. Well, yeah. So now that you can speed up your research, you can actually then maybe do the more important work of how does that research apply? And that gets, really valuable for companies. So we're going to see these.
I see it as
wholesale changes.
In my world, I work a lot in financial services, and everyone asks me, is it going to displace the analysts, right? Because as it comes out with new tools, will you be able to do what an analyst does just with AI? I say it's going to give you so many different tools that you're going to have to master. For instance, I have coming up on the podcast the CEO of a company called Helios, which is a speech recognition technology that allows analysts to determine the level of stress and deception in a CEO earnings call.
Oh, wow.
Now you go, wow, like that adds a whole nother dimension. Like who thought of that? And why would that be important? And that adds work on both sides, both the analyst that's going to be using it, but also the corporate communications department, which is preparing their CEOs to discuss earnings and the positioning of the company. So I don't see it as replacing those individuals. I see it as adding a whole new array of tools to their arsenal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think that, look, let's talk about some industries, right? Healthcare is benefiting greatly from AI in just a number of different ways. One thing, just conversational AI into the workflow of healthcare, being able to capture notes, being able to capture appointments with patients and doctors, and be able to capture all that information, synthesize it, create the summary for the customer, for the patient, that's something they can read in layman's terms, create the medical, transcripts. All that stuff is happening right now in healthcare.
Yeah,
creating
we have
huge
one client.
Efficiencies.
We have a client, Sonde, and they have a voice recognition technology that they use to find respiratory distress in patients, as well as depression in patients. It's all voice recognition. It's wild.
Yeah. So there's efficiencies, there's diagnostics, right? So diagnostics on, using voice and being able to provide diagnosis of several different things. There's talk about early onset Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, being able to detect that really early is just a wonderful use of conversational AI technologies. And then couple that with, large language models on the background that speed up that diagnosis, or even radiology, right? So being able to read, X-rays and CAT scans and others, being able to compare it with hundreds of millions of other records and be able to come up with a diagnosis. that's something that a radiologist maybe can't do as an individual. However, now what a radiologist can do is even be more impactful, more effective with regards to maybe treatment plans and things like that. So there's just a number of ways that, AI is just improving industries like healthcare. But now go to another completely different industry like retail, and, conversational commerce is revolutionizing retail in so many ways, or being able to, leverage AI to allow people to see furniture in their homes and try on clothes and do, so many different things. And so it's a fun period right now, but we are in this moment, like this technology, it feels very new. It's been around for a while. I think the paper that Google released was in 2017 about, basically what OpenAI, ended up doing and showing to the public in 2022. But so the technology, it feels very new. It's been around for a while. And I think that's what happens is there's this, there's years and years of research and refinement, and then it spills into the public sector, just like the iPhone spilled into the public in 2007, right? And really changed the market forever. We're at that moment now. So it's an interesting time. I think, it's going to be fun to see this year's event and how big brands, like Walmart or GM or, big. Maybe
why don't you talk a little bit about that? What are the tracks and who are the speakers? Because I don't think we effectively told how bold this is envisioned with voice and AI coming up in September in Washington.
The way we like to approach our conferences is from, technology is a horizontal. So, and horizontal mean, LLMs and generative AI and conversational AI. These are horizontal technologies that impact every industry. And then we find, key speakers that can actually tell a story of an industry. So Dominic Essig at Walmart's head of conversational commerce and AI is going to talk about the things that they are working at. She actually works in what's called Store Number 8, which is their innovation lab where there's Maisie, where, they get the technologies ready to then field out to the store. So Dominic is going to talk about just where they are on the kind of bleeding edge of how they're incorporating conversational and generative AI into the retail experience. So really fun to see, what one of the leading retailers in the world is doing, from that standpoint. And then we've got, companies like GM and talking about, how voice and conversational AI is integrating into the automobile. And there's been a lot of, talk recently. Mercedes-Benz, who have also keynoted our conference before, just announced that they're incorporating OpenAI and ChatGPT into the Mercedes-Benz platform. And what's interesting about that is they were on the bleeding edge of in-car conversational AI dating back to 2018 and 2019. So it's interesting to see, the auto manufacturers that are going to be speaking at the conference talking about, incorporating and leveraging those OpenAI APIs into their existing platforms when they've partnered with a lot of different conversational cloud companies and incorporated conversational AI into their platforms for many years. So it's a bit telling that I think there's a real thirst and a real hunger for major companies to incorporate OpenAI. We're also going to hear from Moderna.
What an opportunity!
Yeah,
what an opportunity voice and AI brings to the whole community. I personally can't wait to get there. I can't wait to learn more from your speakers and your sponsors and everything. Are you speaking there? Because I would love to sit on a session with you, Pete.
I will be a part of the conference, of course. Helping to run the main stage and make sure. My job is just to make sure that the human beings at the conference are having a great experience and connecting with one another. Our why at Modev is we believe human connection is vital in the era of digital transformation. And that is so true today, Greg. So many of us still feel like we're coming off the lockdown, right? Even though, it's sort of in the rearview mirror.
Absolutely.
I think we absolutely have to connect in person and just take a couple days, slow down, talk to other people about what they're actually doing. I think the volume of information we're getting on our LinkedIn feeds and through the news cycles is so high, and there are so many tools that are entering the market. It's just too much for anybody to really synthesize. And the way you synthesize that is actually having a conversation with real people that are using the technologies and implementing the technology.
Well, that makes me feel so much better, Pete, because I feel overwhelmed by it. And to know that somebody like you, who's been in it for so long, is overwhelmed by it, really sets my mind at ease. Because sometimes I'll take a weekend off and I feel like I've just missed an entire half semester of classes. I'm like, oh my goodness, why'd they take Bing down off open? I'm always blindsided. It moves so fast.
A week off right now, Greg, is like a sabbatical. It's like, you don't want to, So I think it's time to get together, and we're excited. We're thrilled with just the quality of the programming. There's just
that's wild. That's wild. And that's one thing as I do my webinars and financial services and other industries and I'm always on content and on marketing and on language, and how many people appreciate that training. There's so many webinars and conferences about philosophically and legally and copyright, but there's so few about here's how you do it. A, B, C. And I get great reviews because I'm just willing to share how to write a prompt, how to refine a piece using AI, how to determine your voice using AI, or your CEO's voice or your company's voice. So anyway, Pete,
I think another interesting dynamic this year, Greg, that is the code generation platforms are coming to the conference. And I think they realize that, conversational and generative AI requires kind of the whole team. So you can't just be the decision maker. You've got to have your product people there, your developers, your designers, your conversation designers. So GitHub is a sponsor of the conference this year, which is just awesome for us as an event, but great for the developers. They're going to, meet the team that teaches them how to use Copilot effectively and what are the latest capabilities. And, Tab9 is another code generation platform. Codium's another. So they're coming to the conference, and it really just represents that, now it's not just about integrating conversational commerce. It's about how do you leverage generative AI in the whole stack of what you're doing to gain efficiencies, to get to market quickly, to build effective products. So, we're really excited about, what this event really represents.
And that's what holds the real opportunity. What holds the real opportunity is how is this going to impact the workflow, right?
That's right.
We all think about it in these little silos, but really it's about how organizations and enterprises will implement this, up and down the food chain so that they can see new efficiencies that they never even imagined. Not just new efficiencies, but they're gonna ideate whole new products using generative AI, and then they're going to figure out how to communicate those products. So it impacts the entire enterprise, and I'm excited to get there. I know it's going to be a great one, as you've done in the past. Pete, thanks for going out and making this happening for the world. I think it's the only way we're all going to learn is to get together and share from one another, and that human element, just like AI as a whole, is so important for us to learn, share, and to implement. It's the only way we can do it with this brand new technology. So thanks for being with us.
Amen. Couldn't have said it better myself, Greg.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.